My name is Alice, and I came to the Vance mansion not looking for drama, but for refuge. I was a young caregiver with a mountain of student debt, and the live-in position tending to the elderly and fabulously wealthy Eleanor Vance was a lifeline. The mansion was a relic from another era, a grand, Gothic structure filled with priceless art, dusty books, and a profound sense of loneliness. Mrs. Vance herself was as sharp as a shard of glass, though her body was failing her. At 88, she was mostly confined to a wheelchair, but her mind was a fortress of memories and a wit that could cut you to the bone. We formed an unlikely bond in that quiet house. I'd read to her from her favourite poets, and she'd tell me stories of her travels, of a life lived with passion and courage. I wasn't just an employee. In a strange way, I was becoming her friend, the only one she seemed to have left. Her only regular visitors were her nephew, Marcus, and his perfectly manicured wife, Cynthia. They would sweep in every Sunday afternoon, their smiles as bright and hollow as their conversation. Their visits were a performance of affection that lasted exactly 1 hour. They'd kiss Mrs. Vance's cheek, ask about her health in loud, slow voices as if she were a child, and then their eyes would wander, cataloguing the antiques, appraising the paintings on the wall. They treated me like a piece of furniture, a silent witness to their weekly ritual of feigned concern. The unsettling moments started as whispers. I once overheard Marcus in the garden, his voice low and venomous on his phone. "I don't know how much longer we can keep this up," he hissed. "The old woman is tougher than she looks." Another time, Cynthia was admiring a set of diamond earrings on Mrs. Vance's nightstand. "Those would look just wonderful with my blue dress," she'd mused, a little too loudly. But my unease turned to cold fear when I started noticing a pattern. After Marcus and Cynthia's Sunday visits, Mrs. Vance was always unusually drowsy, sometimes confused for the rest of the day. I managed her medication meticulously, so I knew it wasn't a mistake on my part. I began to suspect they were giving her something extra, something to make her more manageable. One Sunday, as they were leaving, Marcus dropped his overcoat. As I bent to pick it up, a small, unlabeled bottle of pills rolled out of his pocket and under a heavy oak table. My heart stopped. He snatched the coat from my hands, his eyes darting towards the table. "Just my vitamins," he said quickly, his smile not reaching his eyes. He made a hasty excuse and practically dragged Cynthia out of the house, leaving the bottle of pills behind. My hands trembled as I retrieved it from the shadows. They weren't vitamins. I didn't know what they were, but I knew they weren't prescribed. Standing in that silent, grand house, I realized I was no longer just a caregiver. I was the sole guardian of a very rich, very vulnerable woman, and her own family was circling her like vultures. That night, with Mrs. Vance sleeping soundly, I took a photo of one of the pills and sent it to a friend of mine from nursing school who was now a pharmacist. Her text back an hour later made my blood run cold. "Alice, where did you get this? This is a heavy-duty sedative. It's not prescribed for her age group and is extremely dangerous if mixed with her heart medication. It would cause exactly the kind of confusion and drowsiness you're describing. This is serious." My fear was now a certainty. Marcus and Cynthia were actively drugging their aunt. But what was their goal? To make her seem confused and incompetent so they could take control of her fortune. I had to do something, but I had no concrete proof. A bottle of pills I found wasn't enough. It would be my word, the word of a hired caregiver, against her loving family. I'd be fired, and Mrs. Vance would be left alone with them. I needed an ally, someone with power. I remembered Mrs. Vance often mentioned her lawyer, a Mr. Gable, with a rare tone of absolute trust. "He's the only one in the world, besides your late grandfather, who never saw me as a walking bank account," she had once told me. Finding his number took some digging through an old, leather-bound address book in her study. Making that call was the biggest risk of my career. I was a caregiver, not a family member. This was a massive breach of protocol. But as I looked at Mrs. Vance sleeping, looking so fragile, I knew I had to take it. "Mr. Gable's office," a crisp voice answered. My heart was pounding. "My name is Alice. I'm Mrs. Vance's current caregiver. I need to speak with him urgently. It's about her safety. I was put on hold for what felt like an eternity. When Mr. Gable came on the line, his voice was professional and wary. He listened silently as I quickly and quietly explained my fears, the drowsiness after the visits, the overheard conversations, and the bottle of pills. "Young lady," he said, his tone skeptical, "those are very serious accusations. Marcus is the executor of his aunt's will. Why would he harm her?" "I don't know," I pleaded, "but I know what I see. She trusts you, Mr. Gable. She told me about the time you helped her save the town library, and how you both shared a love for Persian poetry." I was repeating the private stories she had shared with me during our quiet afternoons, hoping he would see my genuine connection to her. There was a long pause. When he spoke again, the skepticism in his voice was gone, replaced by a steely seriousness. "The library! She hasn't spoken of that in years," he said quietly. "All right, I believe you. We need to be very careful. Can you meet me tomorrow morning?" "Not here. A small coffee shop downtown. Bring the pills." The next morning, I sat in a booth at the Daily Grind, the small bottle of pills feeling like a bomb in my coat pocket. My phone, with the pharmacist's warning text, was on the table. This meeting would either be the first step in saving Mrs. Vance, or it would be the end of my career. I watched the door, my hands trembling, waiting for the man who held my fate, and Eleanor's in his hands. Mr. Gable was a sharp, impeccably dressed man in his 70s, with eyes that missed nothing. He listened intently, examined the pills, and read the text from my pharmacist friend. His expression grew grimmer with each passing second. "I've suspected Marcus was a snake for years," he said, his voice a low growl. "He's been trying to get power of attorney over Eleanor's estate, claiming her mind is fading. If he can demonstrate her confusion to a judge, he can take control of everything. These pills. This is his method. He's not trying to kill her. He's trying to make her look incompetent." A cold, brilliant plan formed in his eyes. "Next Sunday is their regular visit. We have 5 days. I'm going to set a trap, and you, my dear, will be the bait." The next few days were a blur of nervous activity. On Saturday, a technician, posing as a man sent to fix the Wi-Fi, installed a tiny, undetectable camera inside a digital photo frame in the living room. It had a perfect view of Mrs. Vance's favourite armchair, and the small table beside it where I always served her tea. On Sunday, my heart was a frantic drum against my ribs. Marcus and Cynthia arrived, oozing their usual fake charm. I served them tea, my hands shaking so badly I was afraid I'd drop the tray. As planned, I excused myself, claiming I needed to take an urgent phone call in the kitchen. In reality, I was in the library, my eyes glued to a small monitor, where Mr. Gable, who had entered through a back door, stood silently beside me. We watched as the scene unfolded. Cynthia engaged Mrs. Vance in a loud, distracting conversation about a meaningless television show. At the same time, Marcus, thinking no one was watching, pulled a pill from his pocket, swiftly crushed it with the back of a spoon, and tipped the fine white powder into his aunt's teacup, giving it a quick stir. "Eleanor, dear, your tea is getting cold," he said, pushing the cup closer to her. That was our cue. Just as her hand reached for the cup, the library door swung open, and Mr. Gable and I walked into the room. "I wouldn't drink that if I were you, Eleanor." "Mister," Gable said, his voice booming through the silent room. Marcus and Cynthia froze, their faces a perfect picture of shock and horror. They saw me, then they saw the powerful, furious figure of the family lawyer. They started to stammer, to deny, but their lies were useless. "It's a shame you won't get to see the video," Mr. Gable said calmly, gesturing to the photo frame. "But I assure you, the police will find it very compelling." The aftermath was swift and decisive. Faced with irrefutable video evidence, Marcus and Cynthia were arrested for elder abuse and conspiracy to commit fraud. Mrs. Vance, though heartbroken by the betrayal, showed a resilience that astounded me. With Mr. Gable's help, she legally disinherited her nephew and restructured her entire estate. A few months later, as we sat in the garden, enjoying the spring sunshine, she turned to me. Alice, she said, her voice clear and strong, you did more than just care for me. You saved me. I've made some new arrangements. I'm setting up a trust to pay for your complete education all the way through a nurse practitioner's degree. I want you to be my official healthcare advocate, my protector. Tears welled in my eyes as I took her frail hand in mine. I had come to this house looking for a job, a refuge from my own problems. I had found something so much more. In that grand, lonely mansion, two women from two different worlds had found in each other what their own families couldn't give them: unwavering loyalty, trust, and a place to call home.